Well, you know I had to talk about it. Welcome to Conservative Arkansas Media. My name is Paul Harrell. Thank you so much for being with us. We have a great show lined up for you today. Coming up, we're going to be talking with State Representative Matt Duffield about his experience in the Arkansas General Assembly as a freshman, as well as some great pieces of legislation he sponsored and got passed. Also, one of the key pillars of Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders' agenda was getting criminal justice reform and parole reform done. That was accomplished with the work of State Representative Jimmy Gazaway and Senator Ben Gilmore. We talked to Senator Ben Gilmore at the very beginning of these broadcasts, and we reached back out to him, and he's going to be on the show coming up as well to talk about criminal justice reform and really just the overall success of the General Assembly this time. But yeah, you saw those headlines. Let's take a look at them again. For those of you that don't know, maybe you've been living under a rock for a little bit. Arkansas governor, former, and that is certainly apparent in this legislative session where people are protecting our children and willing to go against the corporate fascists and their environmental social governance policies. Former Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson says he's running for president. This was about 10 days ago. Former Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson on Sunday said he will seek the Republican nomination. He will seek the Republican nomination for president. So yeah, I like many of you, I don't think Asa Hutchinson has a chance of even sniffing the White House, let alone actually getting the nomination, being elected president. But here we go. But it has kind of reinvigorated my curiosity into former Governor Asa Hutchinson's business dealings. As many of you know, if you've been following my work for a while, you'll know that the Chinese companies that Governor Asa Hutchinson, under his leadership, brought to Arkansas, that inked these economic development deals where they got taxpayer money and taxpayer incentives to locate here. Some of those companies are also listed on the governor's law firm's website. Well, he'll say it's his son, Asa Hutchinson III, who's, as you saw in the headlines at the beginning, is in his own trouble right now. The son of ex-Governor Hutchinson, formally charged in connection with January arrest where they found cocaine in his pocket. He was intoxicated, driving 71 miles an hour in a 45-mile-an-hour zone. I don't know if you can see that. Let me help you out here. Let me get a little bit bigger. Yeah. I don't know if you saw this, but in the affidavit, sworn under penalty of perjury, 71 in a 45-mile-per-hour zone. So consequently, he's decided to plead innocent. William Hutchinson III, son of former Arkansas governor, pleads innocent to drunk driving, drug possession case. This is Tracy Neal over the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. There's the mugshot photo there, as you can see. And he's out on $50,000 bond. Well, so in response to this arrest, and again, this is one of many run-ins with the law. Asa Hutchinson III has a long history of run-ins with the law and drug and alcohol abuse. This is a fact. Asa Hutchinson III has done this. Now, if you're thinking what I'm thinking and you're immediately drawing comparisons with the former Arkansas governor, his son, and our current resident in the White House, Joe Biden, and his son, Hunter, who also has a long history of alcohol and drug abuse, and also has a long history of foreign governments making Joe Biden's son rich, making the politicians of U.S. children rich. Well, yeah, I mean, that would be an apt comparison. It's certainly a microcosm of what we see at the federal level right here in the state of Arkansas. And matter of fact, after I broke this story a long time ago, there was one mainstream media article that was actually written about it. A local Little Rock affiliate, Little Rock ABC affiliate, wrote this: is the governor of Arkansas' son benefiting from his father's position? Just to kind of give you a little refresher course, this is what that report they filed sounded like.
At 5 o'clock today, as Governor Hutchinson travels overseas on an economic development mission, there are questions here at home about his son and a possible conflict of interest. At least 3 Chinese companies that receive tax incentives from the state of Arkansas have business ties to Asa Hutchinson III. Maureen Glisovic joins us now with what the governor had to say about that late today. Maureen.
Well, Asa Hutchinson III, a Bentonville attorney, went on this trip to China with his father, but today the governor said his son paid his own way.
The Asa Hutchinson Law Group, where the governor is listed as a founder of the firm, had a representative in China this week, Asa Hutchinson III. The clients the law firm represents includes...
So, curiously enough, you can go and look at that report yourself. He is still listed as the founder on the website. It's very fascinating to me, and you can still go to the website, Asa Hutchinson's law firm's website. It is actually right here, ahlawgroup.com. There you see a Chinese company, Dragon Woodland, is listed as a client. It's a sawmill company. Then you have Rise Ever with the Chinese letters there, still listed as a corporate client. And then there's TY Garments right there. Also, this Cambodia, and of course Walmart is listed as clients. But if you come up here we have Asa Hutchinson III. In spite of his law license, they revoked his law license. William Asa Hutchinson III loses his law license, and yet he is still listed on the website here as the managing partner. Now, it is an international law firm. I don't know. They have offices in Madrid, Spain. Did you know this? Curiously, a couple of weeks ago, there were rumblings that Asa Hutchinson was going to announce for president, but I saw where Asa Hutchinson III lost his law license. When was that article written? That was back on January 26th. I don't know. Well, so call it just an intuition. I just got this wild hair about 3 weeks ago, before the former governor, announced for president. Got this wild hair. Now, I was like, whatever happened to Asa Hutchinson III? Saw that he lost his law license. I said, I wonder whatever happened to that website where the same Chinese companies are, essentially you're making money on the side. Same Chinese companies that you gave all this taxpayer money to are also your clients on your website or your son's website or whatever they want to say. And so I go to the website and I can't log on to the website. United States IP addresses up until a couple of weeks ago were completely blocked from the Asa Hutchinson Law Group website. And this piqued this journalist's interest. As a matter of fact, if you go to the website right now, it is available to US IP addresses. But if you go over here and you decide to click clients, it says forbidden. Visitors from your country are not permitted to browse this site. As a matter of fact, there's this foreign government flag. You click that. Forbidden. Visitors from your country are not permitted to browse this site. So the main page is available, but there are still some, and there you see the governor still listed as the founder of the firm. There are still some parts of this website that are not available to United States IP addresses. 3 weeks ago, when I first figured this out or discovered this, I was perplexed. So I started using a VPN to try to log on, and I used I didn't use a China one because I don't think you can. That's the country kind of locked down. Who wants to mask themselves as a Chinese IP address anyway? Eventually, I used a Spanish IP address because on the Facebook page, yes, they still have a Facebook page, it says that they have law offices in D.C., Bentonville, and Madrid, Spain. And so once I used the Spanish IP address, boom, I was able to access the website. Curiously, it's for whatever reason, it's available again to U.S. IP addresses. And again, these Chinese companies are still listed as clients. I don't know. I mean, maybe they just haven't updated it. The last update that I see here was from last summer, June of last year. But I don't know. I can show that to you. Well, as of May 2023, but that's just the report. The actual update was June 7th of 2022. It's all very interesting, but the fact that former Governor Asa Hutchinson is now running for president and is, taking a very anti-Make America Great Again stand. Certainly is, on the chessboard for the globalists. And I say that because the man has an international law firm and, or his son has an international law firm. And, I mean, you can't get more globalist than that, right? I mean, certainly not a nationalist, are you? Not an American nationalist anyway. Maybe a Chinese nationalist, who knows? But what's interesting about all of this is that if you go all the way back to when I broke this story back in December of 2019, or around that time, maybe November, because this Talk Business and Politics article that was essentially forced to cover it because of the news that people were asking, this doesn't seem right. Hutchinson said all his work for TY Garments began in October of 2017. His rise ever work began in August 2018 and consists in obtaining employment-based non-immigrant visas for some of their employees. That was the reasoning here. So it's perfectly fine that my son has Chinese clients, the same Chinese clients that also were coming to Arkansas, although it was very difficult under the Trump administration because of the trade wars. All these Chinese companies are coming here. They're making my son rich. They're giving my son money so that we can ferry foreign nationals into our country. Now, if that excuse for a foreign government enriching the children of American politicians, if that excuse sounds familiar to you, it's because you heard it when Tucker Carlson interviewed Tony Bobulinski about Hunter Biden's dealings with the Chinese energy company, now defunct communist Chinese energy company, CEFC. That's exactly what Tony Bobulinski told Tucker. He said that when he confronted Hunter Biden, why are you the chief counsel? Why are you the attorney for this Chinese energy company, CEFC? Hunter Biden's response, allegedly, according to Tony Bobulinski, was, he told me that he was doing immigration and visa work for them. Microcosm, smaller scale, isn't it? You'd think if the Justice Department had anybody who had any sense of fairness, you could see this in both parties and do something about it. But the uniparty's in control, and they all agree. The people in positions of power on top of all of this. So yeah, that is just a quick refresher course. Asa Hutchinson's international law firm boasts of having Chinese companies as clients. That's still true. The Asa Hutchinson Law Group takes money from Chinese companies, or at least did. They got sweetheart deals at the expense of taxpayers. The firm's website proudly lists their Chinese clients. You just saw it. Portions of the site are blocked to American IP addresses. Hutchinson is listed prominently. The guy running for president, former governor, Asa Hutchinson, no third, is listed prominently as the firm's founder. Curiously, over the last several weeks, the website was blocked to American IP addresses from accessing the site and was only accessible via Spanish IP address. The law firm claims to have an office in Madrid. As of this report, the homepage of the website has now been made accessible to American IP addresses. We, of course, know in 2016, TY Garments, they were offered an annual tax rebate worth $1.6 million, including $1 million infrastructure assistance grants and $500,000 stipend for worker training. In 2017, Heifer Rise Ever Machinery announced they were coming to Arkansas. The state offered the company $1 million from a state incentive fund and a $100,000 training grant, including payroll rebates and tax refunds. In 2019, Dragon Woodland Corporation in West Helena held its grand opening, and they received more than $1 million, including money for training equipment and road improvements. So the same companies that received sweetheart deals at the expense of Arkansas taxpayers are doing business with the Asa Hutchinson law firm. On the side, this is the latest example of an American politician who allows and courts foreign governments who make their children rich. This should be highly illegal, and is further evidence that we are in the midst of a communist takeover in America from both political parties. Both political parties. Again, still don't know why he's still listed on the firm's website, Asa Hutchinson III, even though he no longer has a law license. I know he pled innocent to the charge of being under the influence and going 71 in a 45. The drug abuse, though, is not the only similarity between Hunter Biden and former Arkansas governors we just claimed. Asa Hutchinson III claims his cozy work with these CCP-backed companies involves immigration and visa services. Again, similarly, Tony Bobulinski said the exact same thing. That's what he told Fox News host Tucker Carlson. So, Asa Hutchinson announces his bid for the White House, and you've got to expect all of this stuff will come up if anybody really, truly wants to investigate it. That's one of the reasons I'm making this report known, because if you're going to run for the White House, and you're going to be one of these pawns on this chessboard, because that's what it is. This is more, maybe Asa Hutchinson can be involved in in playing kingmaker, but again, doesn't really have any ability to get to the White House. He is certainly there representing the globalist corporate, sector of, you could say Walmart, but I'm going to go ahead and say, no, it's more likely China. Hutchinson's clearly against the America First agenda, which is extremely popular right now in the GOP base. And so it'll certainly provide a stark contrast just on that alone. But if President Trump gets this news, and look, he's got bigger fish to fry in our GOP Republican primary, but this news right here, this little piece of information is all that is really needed to get a Republican base to completely reject Governor Asa Hutchinson's bid for the White House. And so we will continue to monitor these stories closely as they happen. This is Conservative Arkansas Media. When we come back, State Representative Matt Duffield will join us, followed by Senator Ben Gilmore. Thank you guys so much for watching this, and we'll be back here in just a moment. And welcome back to Conservative Arkansas Media. Thanks so much for being with us. And so when we started our legislative roundups several weeks ago, one of the things that I wanted to do was talk to freshman legislators. And we did that. We talked to a few freshman legislators in the Arkansas House of Representatives. And now that the session is concluded, I thought I would reach out and talk to another freshman state representative. His name is Matt Duffield, and he joins us today. State Representative Duffield, thanks so much for coming on the program.
Yeah, pleasure to be here. Glad to come on your show, Paul.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about, as a freshman, your experience, going down Little Rock. You're from Russellville. What was it like? I mean, was it it was definitely a fast-moving session from my point of view, but just kind of tell us your first impression being a freshman state rep.
Yeah, I mean, it was, I enjoyed all of it. I really did. The best way I can explain the pace of the session is it was like the first 10 to 12 weeks, we were walking on a treadmill at a 3.0 speed. And then the last 2 weeks, we were doing 40s and running 100 yards and going out and jumping hurdles. So it went from a snail's pace to where we were down there from 8, 9 o'clock in the morning till 10:30 at night in committees. So it was how should I say this? It was I guess a diverse, it went from one extreme to another quick,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you tell us a little bit about Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders? And, because not only are you a freshman, she, in a way, first-term governor, first legislative session as a governor. What was your relationship like working with the governor's office? Because, the whole system has to work together in order to get these laws passed.
Yeah, Governor Sanders has been great to me. I had several one-on-one meetings with her, and in order to get those, I just contacted Jamie Barker, who works for her, and he basically handles the business with the House, so with the legislators. So we essentially go through Mr. Barker there, and I met with her several times. I had some good meetings with her, 15, 20 minutes long, and I had an agenda when I went in. What I mean by that is, some bills and things that we had in mind. And she sat there with a notepad, the same as Mr. Barker, and she made the notes, and she gave me her honest opinions, and I appreciated that. And, I really enjoyed working with her throughout the same session. So, the governor and I are about the same age. I think we're like 6 months apart. And so, we come from a similar background, I guess, and upbringing through high school and whatnot. And culturally, we have a lot of the same interests. And And so I got along great with her, and I have nothing but positive things to say about the governor.
Well, in the middle of the legislative session, we have the State of the Union given by Joe Biden, and then she got to give the Republican response where she said the difference right now is between normal and crazy, and that was a huge moment for me, just because that's I think what a lot of us are thinking right now, and she's saying and really representing what we're all thinking. But you mentioned agenda, you mentioned bills, and so I wanted to go over some of your bills that you filed. And we can do this. I can pull them up right here off of the legislature's website. Let's start with this one right here, which has to do with disabled American veterans. This is HB 1594 to create a sales tax exemption for the Disabled American Veterans Association. State Representative Duffield, what can you tell us about this bill?
Yeah, well, that bill was brought to me by the DAV organization in Russellville. That's a big part of our community there. And I've got to give props to Senator Flippo as well as Representative Painter, who worked hand in hand with me on this legislation. And essentially, one of my goals going into this session as a freshman is I wanted to get something passed to help our veterans. And I'm very proud to say that with the support that we had, as you see there, the various co-sponsors that signed on to this, we going into this session with a new governor, and there were some budgetary concerns and whatnot. We knew we needed to have a good bill that would be have a positive impact on veterans, that would have a nominal effect on the state budget. And so this bill is only going to have a $2,000 or less impact on the state budget annually. And so what this bill does is the DAV, the Disabled American Veterans Organization, when they have their meetings every year, when they go to, book their hotel conference rooms, their hotel rooms, their catering, anything to do with their events, they're going to be sales tax exempt for that. So, it's just a small token of our appreciation to our great disabled veterans that have served this country and worked for us, and just like I said, proud of all the support. Really appreciate the committee support that helped get this through, and obviously through the House and then the Senate as well.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, anything for the people who, I'm not I didn't enlist. Didn't have the courage that these men have had, these heroes have had, especially when you talk about those who are disabled for serving their country. So yes, that's a fantastic piece of legislation. And I've been talking to the gun owners of Arkansas, and I've been talking a little bit with them about the type of session that they had in terms of their bills, essentially giving the Second Amendment, protecting Second Amendment rights, but restoring Second Amendment rights here in Arkansas. And from what I can tell preliminarily, they have had a fantastic session. And one of those bills had to do was HB. Let me go back to the screen here. Sorry, I've got too many tabs open. One of those bills was 1547 to define a loaded firearm for the purpose of the statute concerning possession of a weapon. Now, it wasn't, from my understanding, Representative Duffield, it really wasn't a very long piece of legislation. I'm pulling it up right now, and it's about a page long. Yeah, it's 1 page long. What can you tell us about this one?
Sure. First off, I can't say enough good things about gun owners of Arkansas. And to your point, GoAR had a grand slam session. I mean, I think every piece of legislation that they brought forth and wanted to get through, to my knowledge, they got every piece of legislation through. And that's a testament to their hard work, their communication skills with us as legislators in regards to the Second Amendment. And so this bill they brought to me, the loaded handgun definition, it was important because Arkansas doesn't have one. And so what we have is we have 500 municipalities. Henceforth, we could have 500 different definitions. So we want Northeast Arkansas, Northwest Arkansas, and the rest of the state to have the same clear definition of what a loaded firearm is. And I appreciate, once again, all the support we got on this bill, the co-sponsors, support in the House and the Senate. and to get this important piece of legislation through.
So practically, what does that mean? I mean, at this point, if you have, the way I've read it, a loaded firearm means a firearm that is assembled and contains an unexpended cartridge, shell, or projectile in the firing position. What exactly practically does that mean? If you have a magazine in the gun, but it's not in the chamber, that's not considered a loaded gun?
Yes. Well, it's, I don't want to waste our whole interview going back and forth about it, but it says, if you read the bill, it says it pretty much in black and white what it is. And, that's how it is. This definition is the same definition the state of Utah uses. That's what we kind of modeled after. I think we made a few modifications to it. But what this does, it provides important clarification for judges across the state. I will say this, there was some concern from some judges saying, hey, if you pass this, there's going to be guns in the courtroom. Well, no, there's not. A judge has the ability, they can ban cell phones from their courtroom. And in the same light, they can certainly ban weapons, however they wish to define that, loaded or not. They can say they're not allowed in my courtroom. And so, that was a few things that was the thing that was brought up, but it was just not, in my view, a judge has the ability, they can do whatever they want in their courtroom. And so this would not affect that at all. It's simply just a clarification bill.
You also passed, though, a Second Amendment resolution. I actually played the video of that. I think the last broadcast or the one before that here on Cam Media. That was an important thing as well, to declare, Arkansas as a Second Amendment state and a day to recognize that.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. And, the Second Amendment resolution, I thought it was important because, at least in my district, and I know certainly many others in the state, the Second Amendment's a really big deal. And in Pope County and Russellville, where I'm from, the Second Amendment, whenever I was on the campaign trail, it was a big concern that we have a federal government in place that they wish to take our firearm rights away and then some, et cetera. And so I felt it was important to let them know and as well to create a resolution that other legislators get on board with and go back to their district and say, look, we are going to protect the Second Amendment. And in my view, as you know, Paul, in our past discussions, the Second Amendment is the most important because it protects all the rest. And I think a lot of times people get a little too comfortable. I think we as a society get too comfortable thinking that, well, we've got our guns, we're past the point of having them taken away. And, I just think we need to remain diligent in our viewpoint that our Second Amendment rights stay and they are not infringed upon ever.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and with the federal government doing what it's doing now and the weaponization of the federal government against law-abiding citizens, and in particular, apparently now, Christians, with the FBI infiltrating churches, according to reports, it's certainly good to have our Second Amendment more now than ever. So, again, we're talking with State Representative Matt Duffield, freshman. Let me ask you this. Do you enjoy being a legislator, and was it what you expected in your freshman term?
Yeah, well, to answer your question first, I've enjoyed the process far more than I even could have imagined. And, I've already made some lifelong friends down here. There's some great legislators. Our freshman class has some tremendous people in it, and really enjoyed working with them. I really appreciate the leadership of the House that gave myself some opportunities, as well as many of the other freshmen. And that meant a lot that they had that faith in myself, as well as some of my friends and colleagues in the freshman class. To answer your question, how it was different, I'll say this, Paul. I mean, I know everybody hears the rumors of dirty Arkansas politics and the things that go on and the things that lobbyists do. And I can tell you from a firsthand experience that the corrupt acts and things that you hear or that you may have heard about in the past, they're not there anymore. I mean, the drugs and the whatever you hear, the rumors of drug use and liquor and women and all that, it's cleaned up now. It is, and it is a House. I can speak for the House of Representatives. Throughout the entire session, it was a group of people with integrity that were there for the right reasons, and all of the nonsense of decades of the past. I can tell you from firsthand experience that's gone, and I think that's a good thing. And we all take working for the taxpayers of the state of Arkansas very seriously. We're getting paid taxpayer dollars, and we want to use that time efficiently and effectively to work for the people of this state. And I think that we did that this session, and we'll continue to do so.
I want to ask you, we went over some of your bills, and they're listed there. And so this is a kind of a two-part question. Are you going to run for re-election? And you can feel free to make that announcement here. And number two, what other policies, what other goals would you have that you want to work on in your second term?
Sure. Well, number one, yes, I absolutely am going to run for re-election. And I'll go ahead and make that announcement here on your show. I appreciate you asking me that. When I ran, even before I got in office, I said, if elected, I would like to stay around as long as the taxpayers want me there and as long as the voters want me to work for them. And that's just it. I'm here to work for the people of my district and the state. And it's like I said, it's a position that I take seriously. We're working on taxpayer dollars, and I think we need to give people their money's worth. And I certainly tried to do that as a freshman. I know I learned a lot, and I think coming into, next session, I'll be, continue to be more effective to work for the people. Because at the end of the day, I look at myself as I'm an employee and they're the employer. And I try to communicate with the people and let them know what I'm doing and let them know, the good, the bad, the ugly of the situations. And, but anyway, as far as moving forward, there's absolutely some legislation that I think, we need to try to get through. There was some people in my district brought to my attention some issues that had taken place. I'll just go ahead and mention one now. There are certain companies and entities in this state and organizations, and they have rules on the books that say in an emergency situation that only X, Y, or Z employees are permitted to call 911. And I don't think that's right. And I think that, as we move forward, I'm working on some legislation to change that. We have a young man in my district that unfortunately died. And we believe that if we changed that perhaps we could save some lives in the future. So that's just one that's on a list. But I think that I think this session, it's like anything else. There was some good legislation that we got passed. There was some legislation brought forth that, in my view, was unnecessary. But everybody's got their own viewpoints in their own districts, and at the end of the day, every district, I believe, had a voice, and I think the leadership did a really good job of allowing every district to have their voice and do good work for their people.
Yeah, while I have you, last question, two of the biggest initiatives were the LEARNS Act, education reform, criminal justice reform. Coming up here in just a minute, we're sitting down with Senator Ben Gilmore, who spearheaded the parole reform and the criminal justice reform. What were your thoughts on the LEARNS Act and the prison situation and the crime situation in Arkansas?
Sure. Well, the LEARNS Act, I signed on as a co-sponsor, and I I don't co-sponsor things unless I believe in them, and I believe in the LEARNS Act. And, Brian Evans, who's the chair of the Education Committee, was very kind to me, and he sat down and we went through the LEARNS Act page by page. And I think it's really going to change the state of Arkansas in a very positive way. The most exciting thing to me in the LEARNS Act is in ninth grade, students are going to be given an option. It's no longer just college or bust. They're going to be given an option. They can get what's called a career pathways diploma. So when a young person is in ninth grade, they can choose, hey, I wish to go to a college, or I wish to essentially learn a trade. Do they wish to be an electrician, a welder, plumber, in the world I'm in, an aggregate? And I believe that for me personally, that is the most exciting part of the LEARNS Act, because I think it can change the workforce of this state. Because I can speak for myself as a small business owner that finding truck drivers and workers, I mean, it's I'm not going to lie, it's a difficult process to find good workers like that. And I think that this part of the LEARNS Act is going to change the workforce of the state of Arkansas in a very positive direction in the future.
That sounds good. Well, we really appreciate you spending some time with us, State Representative Matt Duffield, and we need to do it again sometime.
I'd be great, Paul. I appreciate it, and like I said, I appreciate all you do for the state. I think you have a great show, and look forward to coming on again.
All righty. Sounds good. Folks, we're going to be back here in just a moment with Senator Ben Gilmore. We're going to talk criminal justice reform. Don't go anywhere. And welcome back to Conservative Arkansas Media. My name is Paul Harrell. Thank you so much for being with us. So, as we've been talking throughout this legislative session, one of the things that we've discussed has to do with criminal justice reform, parole reform here in the state of Arkansas. We've got a few headlines I can show you. We have Arkansas criminal justice reform bill headed to the governor's desk, so there's been progress made there. Another headline, Protect Arkansas Act headed to Governor Sanders' desk. And then another one, Arkansas Prison Reform Bill awaiting governor's signature. So one of the first people that we interviewed in our inaugural episode here of these legislative roundups was Senator Ben Gilmore. He is one of the politicians who've been tasked with getting this legislation across the finish line. I reached back out to Senator Ben Gilmore, and he joins us now. Senator Gilmore, thank you so much for coming back on the program. I know you have been extremely busy, and so thank you for the time.
Hey, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Always great to be with you. Appreciate what you do and helping put out good conservative messaging for Arkansans.
Well, I'm trying, and it's been a fast moving session, and I know we've been trying to make this interview work for a couple of weeks now, and I know you have honestly been, probably maybe the busiest you've ever been as a legislator. This is a huge piece of legislation. What does it do, and how did this process play out?
Absolutely. Thank you for that question. And it has been a very, very busy session, but I think it's one that Arkansans should be proud of. We have moved the needle greatly in Arkansas for conservatives, and that's a lot of credit due to the current governor, Sarah Sanders. Appreciate her leadership on these issues, and of course my colleagues in the legislature. Look, the Protect Arkansas Act is a significant piece of legislation, as I've called it repeatedly, a game changer for our state. Right now, under current law, we have offenders that are eligible for parole after serving just a mere 1/6 of their sentence. So we're talking violent offender back on the streets after serving, in some cases, 1/6 or maybe less than in some cases. So this is unacceptable. And, we realize this. A lot of credit to the Attorney Griffinship on this issue as well. He started championing this issue back, a year ago, even longer. And has really led on this, because he even said at that time when he first started talking about it that it's unacceptable not only for our victims, not only just for our communities, but also law enforcement. The fact that we make law enforcement go back and catch the same people over and over again is unacceptable. And this bill changes that. This bill supports victims. It stands with our law enforcement. It provides much needed safety in our communities. And how do we do that? We do that by making sure that violent offenders are where they belong, and that's locked away from our communities. And so with that, you're going to see in this bill, you're going to see some of the worst of the worst. They're going to have to spend 100% of their sentence behind bars, and that's where they should be.
I mean, absolutely, that's where they should be. And I was familiar just when following the news, the Democrat arguments in this. They were trying to say that there's nothing out there that shows that making people serve their sentences longer, or making people serve more of their sentence, reduces crime. And they kept saying there's no studies out there that show that. But I mean, this is something that, in my opinion, feel free to respond to this, Senator Gilmore. It's common sense. I mean, if there's less criminals on the street, if they're behind bars, then they can't become repeat offenders. And so obviously it's the case that making violent criminals serve more of their sentences does reduce crime on the streets, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Because look, you have to factor in a deterrent effect. So let's just use what I think is probably the best example: capital punishment. Do people still commit murders? Absolutely. Take away capital punishment, take away any sort of harsh punishment for killing someone, are you going to have more murders? I would argue, yes, you would. And so with that, I think you have to factor in that there's going to be a deterrent effect. Here's an anecdote for that. I had a prosecutor tell me that once this bill had been passed, he was visiting with some inmates in the county jail in his district. And the first question they asked, now these are people who've already been arrested and are already being adjudicated. And they asked him, hey, please tell me that we're not going to be sentenced under this new bill. That's criminals. That's criminals asking that question because they understand what this means for them. They understand that if they do some serious, heinous crimes, they're going to spend more time in prison. Now, here's the other thing that this bill does that I think is really important to point out. When we talk about we have a high recidivism rate, and we do, where it's about 47% or so in the state, which is just unacceptable. But when you're looking at the current system and people are eligible for release after only serving 1/6 of their sentence, they're going to be eligible for release before they can even finish any sort of programming that takes place in incarceration. So what incentive do we have currently for inmates if, let's just say, they want to better themselves or want to get their life back on track or want to have productive life outside of incarceration? We're giving them no incentive because right now they're going to get out whether they do programming or not. With this bill, we're saying you have to earn your way out. If you want to get out 15% early on an 85% sentence, or 100% sentence that could be reduced to 85% if you do programming, that's an incentive. If you want to get out 50% early, that's an incentive. So we are incenting people to go and do workforce training, to go and do substance abuse counseling in prison, all these different things that already exist, but there's no incentive for our inmates to go and do that. So this bill basically says, look, if you do this crime, you're going to do real hard time, and you're not going to just get released because you want to be released or because you hit some magic date that says you're able to be released. You're going to have to earn your way out. And I think that's common sense. I think that it sends the message of we're not messing around in Arkansas on crime and on criminals.
No doubt. That's exactly what this says, and we've seen this uptick in crime all across the country. Governor Sanders said it best, I think, in her inaugural address. She said there's nothing compassionate about releasing unreformed and unrepentant criminals back on to the streets. So with this new policy, with this new law that is going to be signed by the governor, by the way, when is she going to sign it?
Today at 1 o'clock. Okay,
so as of today, that today is Tuesday. This is right before lunch, and so she's going to be signing it today. Can you tell us, with this increased amount of time prisoners are going to be behind bars, that means that we're going to have more beds, right? More prisons. So tell us about that plan, because I mean we have to keep our streets safe. This is one of the ways that you're going to have to do it. You're going to have to build more prisons or expand existing prisons. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you make a great point, because you can't do policy like this without having the capacity and the space to do it. And so I want to be real clear here with your viewers and your listeners. When we talk about building capacity, you hear the stories of we haven't built capacity in 20 years and whatever. And that's true in the normal sense of how you think about things. But the Attorney General makes a really good point when he talks about this issue. And he says, make no mistake, we've been building capacity. We've just been doing it under the radar and nobody's been paying attention. And what he means by that is we've been slowly pushing state inmates into county jails because we don't have the capacity. So what does that do? That puts a burden on local law enforcement. That puts a burden on the local sheriff. That puts a burden on the local jailers that are in there trying to manage inmates that, quite frankly, they have no business dealing with, because these are some of the worst of the worst. And so where some of these people should be in more intense, secure prisons, they're in our county jails. And there's about 2,300 inmates in county jails. So we've been steadily increasing capacity. So what we're saying under this plan, and certainly this bill is part of that, but the governor announced that she is committed to building 3,000 beds in our state. Now, some of that's going to be, I think, all the options are on the table. Some of that's going to be, maximum security jail cells, and some of that's probably going to be lower level, just to help increase the capacity needed with the revocations and offenders who don't need to be in maximum security. But we are finally doing what we should do as a state in building capacity, because I will tell you this, we have an obligation as a state to provide for the public safety of our citizens. And we can't do that if we are not building capacity to house violent offenders. And, our county jails and our sheriffs have done a great job, and credit to them, but it is unfair to them what we've been doing. And again, it costs, in some cases, it costs more money to house them in these local county jails, because there's the transportation costs to and from. Like there's some counties that are housing prisoners and they've got to be adjudicated in a court that's 4 hours away. So you're taking a deputy to transfer someone. You're taking the cost that it costs to send that deputy, sometimes overnight, wherever it might be. And so the system is just truly broken right now, Paul. And I think that what you're going to see with building additional capacity, what you're going to see with this new sentencing bill, is we're trying to get the ship back on track. That's only a part of it. The other thing that she announced too, and to her credit, I really want to give her a lot of credit on this, because she understands that if we're going to deter crime, we got to be able to have everything in place that means that we can effectively adjudicate crime. And what do I mean by that? I mean the sense that we have to have a crime lab that can function and that can process evidence and get it to our prosecutors and to our law enforcement. And right now, the folks at the crime lab are doing a great job, but I've been through the crime lab about 3 times and toured it just to see what's going on there, to see how bad it is. And let me tell you, it's pretty bad. We are dealing with a building that is in some areas dilapidated. We're dealing with capacity issues in the crime lab. And so there's a commitment to spend money to build a new crime lab so that we can better adjudicate crime. Because right now, you've probably seen some of the headlines over the last, 5 years or so, that the rape kits. So when someone's raped, they collect samples, the whole deal, won't get into all that, but it goes to the crime lab. And right now they're behind in just processing those. That's unacceptable. Yep. If you're a victim, or if you're the family of a victim, or even if you are someone who is a defendant waiting to be adjudicated, that is unacceptable. So we've got to fix that. And so that is part of this overall, I think, what she called the Safe and Stronger Arkansas plan, which the Protect Arkansas Act is a part of.
Most of my coverage of the Arkansas General Assembly, and I saw on the front page of the Gazette this morning, income tax reduction. That's great. I'm a huge fan of that. Obviously, like all Republicans, I wish it were more. But most of my coverage has been about protecting our kids. And right. I've really covered a lot of these social issues, more so than I ever have, because of just how, in my opinion, depraved the left has gotten, and our kids are being affected. I feel like this goes right along with that. This is such a good counterpart to everything else that the legislature has done, because I have seen the headlines in my own area of Northeast Arkansas, as well as across the state, that crime is a serious problem. It is happening more and more. Violent crime is a serious problem. It's happening more and more. And this is, just like it's the responsibility, I believe, of the government to protect our kids from debauchery, we also have to protect not just our kids, but everybody from violent criminals. Right. What are your thoughts?
No, look, I couldn't agree more. And that's why I was really excited to work on this issue. And it was a very sobering issue to work on, because when you're talking about, impacting people's lives, this is what government exists to do. Government, as a small government conservative, I don't believe in growing government. I don't believe in government getting out of its lane and dealing with things it has no business dealing with. But when it comes to providing for the public safety of our citizens, that is a core function of what government's there to do. And this bill is at the center of that. And so I was certainly honored to work on that. But, to your point more directly, we have an obligation to protect our children and our minors in our state. to protect the more vulnerable among us. And if we're not doing a good job of that, shame on us. And I think that this legislature has acted in a way that it is quite clear where we stand on these issues of protecting our children from legislation that pushes back on child sex criminals. In this crime bill, we've put the worst of the worst of child sex criminals in the 100% or the 85% category. Why? Because they deserve to be there. They don't deserve to get out early. They don't deserve to get back out. And in some cases, I've heard stories over the course of this where they get back out and they harass their victims or their families. It's unacceptable. And so this bill pushes back on that, coupled with all of the other issues that we've dealt with to push back on the left, the woke left agenda that is just insane. When I first got elected and we started dealing with some of these issues as it relates to transgenderism or just dealing with pedophiles, I never really thought about it that we would spend a lot of time debating those issues. And it's sad, Paul, that we have to spend so much time debating them because they are real issues that affect Arkansans and they affect our country more at large. And we've got to push back on that. The fact that we have to have bills that say, you know what, if you enter a restroom that's opposite of your gender and there's a minor in there, you should leave. And of course, we get attacked and we get called crazy and we get called out of control and everything else. But the fact that we have to pass legislation like this to protect children is just disturbing to me. But we have to do it. And we have to push back against the leftist agenda. And, my colleagues and friends across the aisle who are very articulate in how they pose their arguments, and I respect them for it. But I'm going to just tell you, they get those issues dead wrong. And the fact that we have to protect kids, like with the Senator Deese's porn legislation, where you have to prove your age before you can enter a porn site, and people freak out and say, "Oh, we shouldn't do that. It's government, being overbearing and overreach and everything else." We ought to be protecting kids from the trash that's on the internet. And, the other thing is there's so many different platforms that kids are being preyed upon,
Yes.
like with social media and other things. We've had to act this legislative session to push back on some of that stuff. So not only are we addressing it with the crime legislation, as we should, but we're doing it basically to get ahead of it before it becomes crimes, if you will, and push back on that. So you've seen this legislature act in a way to protect kids across the board.
It's unprecedented. It's also unprecedented really across, I'm calling them Christian red states. I mean, the LGBT lobby has taken massive losses all across, and I think that's potentially one of the motives for the Christian persecution that happened in Nashville. I'm so glad that you brought this up, and I don't want to take up too much of your time because I know you got to go and got to get to this bill signing. But back a couple of sessions ago, when then at that time Senator Jason Rapert, he spearheaded this Arkansas trigger law that essentially, in the event that Roe versus Wade was overturned, which we thought was going to be impossible at the time, right? I mean, we never thought that would happen. Arkansas's abortion laws go back to the way they were before the Supreme Court, did what they did. At the same time that bill was being run, the legislature in New York State, they were passing a bill making it legal to kill a baby up to 9 months. And I thought to myself, I was so happy then to be in Arkansas because these legislative acts have consequences. They really do. And, the people of New York are saying, no, we want to sacrifice more kids. And then the people of Arkansas are saying, no, we don't. And we're making plans, for essentially a miracle, which then actually happened. And we now know Roe versus Wade was overturned. I feel the same way now that I did then with these bills of protecting our kids. And it's not just Arkansas. It's a lot of other Christian states that are doing this. We are using what little bit of federalism we have left in the tank to push back against what every institution in this country seems to be controlled by the left is pushing and forcing on our kids. And I'll give you the last word, sir.
No, look, Paul, I think you're dead on this. And, I got asked yesterday by a member of the press, there's been a lot of culture war related legislation passed this session. What do you think about that? And I didn't actually know where this journalist was located. Found out after I made my statement that they were in Washington State. And I said, well, it's very easy. You know, what we don't want is we don't want Arkansas to be like Washington, Oregon, New York, California. And I started listing these states. And he's like, well, you should know I'm in Washington State. And I said, well, no offense to you, but I don't want Arkansas to be like your state. And that's why we have to pass this legislation. That's why we have to put guardrails up along the highways to keep the cars from going off. This is why we do this stuff. And so I think that if we are going to see this state be, I think, be a shining light, or Reagan talked about the shining city on the hill. We have to have forward-thinking legislators that say, you know what? Yeah, we may not have these problems right now in Arkansas, but we could. I mean, who would have thought, to your point, we would have seen the overturn of Roe v. Wade with the Dobbs decision? I mean, we've been fighting for 50 years. One of the reasons I got in politics was over the abortion issue. And we've been fighting that issue for over 50 years. Who would have thought? I mean, that's why you can't give up. You can't quit fighting. You can't quit pushing back, because I can tell you one thing, the other side hasn't stopped, and they're constantly moving the goalpost.
Yeah, they certainly are. Senator Ben Gilmore, we really appreciate your time. Thanks so much for doing everything that you're doing, and give my best to your colleagues as well.
We'll do it. Thank you, Paul. Look forward to being on again.
Absolutely. Folks, this is Conservative Arkansas Media. Thank you so much for watching.